very important message. So, let's go to Malachi chapter 3. And what was it there that struck you from that passage, if anything? What was interesting there to you?
People's unawareness.
Unawareness? Yes?
That is serving God.
Right, so we have there in verse 14, or even in 13 it starts, and he says, God says, you have said harsh things against me, says the Lord. Yet you ask, what have we said against you? So they're quite oblivious. So he has to remind them. So when it's like that, it's often like we are. In our actions, we're actually saying something, but we haven't said it in words, have we? But in our actions, we're saying it, and the Lord is actually looking at that. So he might have given them an answer like this. Yes, you might not have said it out loud with words, but you certainly have said it in your actions, which is this. You have said it is futile to serve God. What did we gain by carrying out his requirements and going about like mourners before the Lord Almighty? What have we gained? So, essentially, what were they expecting, do you think?
Return for pleasing God.
Yes, at least there must be some return. Otherwise, what is the purpose of it all? That's really where their thinking is. Honestly, I mean, this is just, there's nothing forthcoming, there's no return. Amazing to see where their minds were, what they were focusing on. Okay? It is futile to serve God. Nothing has gone better with me since serving him. In fact, probably gone worse, if anything. All right, and he warns them there. And then, of course, he speaks wonderful words to them, even though they have that sort of thing that they're displaying in their lives. He has wonderful words there for them. And he says, return to me, I will return to you. So first of all, I want you to think about that. Really, think about that in your own life. Have you felt that in your life before? Who has felt like that?
Very young Christian.
I felt like that. Gee, Lord, honestly, I thought that at least something, Lord, even if it's a little something, there'll be some return. But you know what? It's interesting here in 1 Timothy, even though we haven't perhaps read this passage in that way before, it speaks about something similar. And let's go there to 1 Timothy. And Paul, of course, is speaking to young Timothy, and he's speaking to him about the love of money is the heading there. If anyone teaches false doctrines or does not agree to the sound instruction of our Lord Jesus Christ, to godly teaching is conceit and understands nothing. He has an unhealthy interest in controversies and quarrels about words that result in envy, strife, malicious talk, evil suspicions, and constant friction between men of corrupt mind who have been robbed of the truth and who think that godliness is a means to financial gain. Right, it makes us think of that. So here we have in 1 Timothy people who think similarly. They think that godliness is a means to financial gain. And then he makes a very interesting statement, Paul does. He says, and I wonder what you have in your life when you've read this passage, what you thought. He says, but godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world and we can take nothing out of it. But godliness with contentment is great gain. So now how do we understand that verse? but godliness with contentment is great gain. All right, so I'm going to just stop there, and we're going to go across to 2 Corinthians chapter 9. And I have just read to you the word that appears here in 2 Corinthians. We've just read it. But now we've got to go and see whether we recognize it at all in 2 Corinthians chapter 9 to actually understand what Paul is saying to Timothy. So 2 Corinthians 9, 6 to 15 we read, but the verse we are after is verse 8. All right, so now Paul here writes about sowing generously. God, verse 8, is able to make all grace abound to you, so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. That's the NIV. Interesting, isn't it? So how does that link up with 1 Timothy chapter 6? And God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. As it is written, He has scattered abroad His gifts to the poor. His righteousness endures forever. Doesn't that sound exactly the opposite of those people in Malachi? Goodness me. Paul says, God has just poured it out, man. And yet the people in Malachi say, well, we haven't seen a single bit of return. This is futile. This bears no return whatsoever. So how do you reconcile those two things? But anyway, the key lies in this word. And the word is AU, if you want to make a note of it, autarkes. So it's AU. T-A-R-K-E-S, autarkes, in the Greek. And it's translated in 2 Corinthians 9 as this: so that at all times, having all that you need. Okay? But now let's go back to 1 Timothy. How is it translated there? We didn't read that there, did we? We read a different word. What was that word? Yeah, verse 6. But godliness with contentment is great gain. So this autarkes word actually means to have abundantly. To have abundantly. To have more abundantly than. This is what Paul is trying to say in 2 Corinthians. And God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. So how we need to understand this little verse, but godliness with contentment is great gain. Now, when we think of contentment, as we saw the last time when we dealt with this word, we were dealing with the word content. We saw that our idea of contentment is to sort of, okay, I'll make do with what I've got. Isn't that so? Contentment. Be happy with what you've got. Yeah? That's right. That's our idea of contentment. All right, this is, I'll be happy with what I've got. But it's strange that Paul that uses that word, autarkes, to describe what? What does he describe? Abundance. Absolute abundance. You will have abundantly more than you need. Okay, but now, how does one, here is a man, just like the ones in Malachi, here is a man who thinks that godliness is a means to some gain, okay? But actually in the Greek, the word that the bit that follows is but true godliness. with contentment actually meaning but true godliness. And what he wants to say is this: there is one type of godliness which comes with nothing. And there is another type of godliness, and in the Greek it's the true godliness, which comes with contentment, or rather huge amounts of this grace and strength and resources. Now that word godliness, we must just look for a moment at that. It's translated godliness. The Greek word has two parts to it, and it is true worship. So it has two parts. One part is true, and the other part is worship. So godliness, it's been translated godliness, which unfortunately in the English language could mean a whole lot of things, eh? So read it properly. In the Greek it says, but true worship, which comes with all of this, is great gain. And it is. It is. And so we've got to go and say, all right, hang on a minute. Here we have in Malachi and the first bit of 1 Timothy 6, we have people who is actually worshipping. They come to God, but in the back of their minds they have this other motive. Please, Lord, honestly, Lord, look, Lord, I'm serving you. Surely you can make it go a little bit better with me. Surely you can bless me with a little something. But what blessing does that person have in mind?
Money.
Personal gain.
Could well be money, definitely be money. In fact, Malachi speaks about money, so does 1 Timothy. Okay? Because the Greek word there, financial gain, is actually silver. The word silver. A-R-G, argo, silver. So yes, so it's money.
Personal gain.
Personal gain, yes, that's right. So the person who comes with that idea in mind and worships with that idea is actually called what sort of a man? Men of corrupt mind who have been robbed of the truth, who think that godliness is a means to financial gain. And then what Paul does in his letter to Timothy, he's actually turning it around. And he's saying, but true worship comes with this massive amount of grace and strength and so forth, so that you can abound in every good work, and it's great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and I wonder whether you can think why he says this. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. Why do you think he says that?
The beliefs of people like the Egyptians who they built the big temples of all their wealth, believe they can take it with them.
Yes. They put money in their hands even, just in case. Put some in your hand as well, and around you.
Yeah, I think it's taking your mind off the material into the spiritual.
That's right. He's trying to take their minds off the material, because in two places in Scripture we read, naked I came into the world, like Job says it, and naked I will depart. But why do you think he says it over here? But godliness with contentment, well, this great load of grace and power is great gain, because you can actually take it with you. It's quite amazing, isn't it? So now let us go back to 2 Corinthians chapter 9. And of course, knowing now what the word is there, godliness with contentment. But it's not just godliness, it is true worship. Okay? True worship comes with this God is able to make all grace abound to you, so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. Okay, so in this case, what is the blessing given for? That's very interesting, isn't it? So that's another difference that we see. The one who comes and is looking for some gain is looking for gain for themselves. It reminds me of another scripture where Paul writes, the reason why we should work. The one who has been stealing should steal no more, but should work in order that, who knows what it says? In order that he can have something to share with others. It's very interesting. Not in order that he can take care of himself, in order that he can have something to share with others. It almost reminds us of that. But here we have the situation where we now need to go and look at what the lesson is for us. Now we think that contentment is an instruction. Don't you think? I say to you, you should be content with what you have. Isn't it like an instruction? But actually, what Paul is trying to say is that contentment is something which it has to do with God's unlimited resources that He gives. It is not to do with something that you have to, it's not an instruction. True godliness brings this boundless amount of grace and strength and Himself and resources, which brings you into contentment. Isn't that interesting? It actually brings you into the contentment. So, this gets us thinking then, alright, so our attitude towards contentment and godliness, or true worship, as the Greek says, comes with this boundless amount of resources which brings me into contentment. So if I am not content and I'm forever crying out to God, but this and this and this and this, what is the problem? Because, look, it's very clear. He says, and God will, this is, remember, the true worship. We come to Him in true worship. God is able to make all grace abound to you. Same word, autarkes. So that in all things, at all times, having all you need, you will abound in every good work. So if we are not content, what is the problem?
We don't really know the truth.
We want something from God.
We're doing it over ourselves.
It's interesting, isn't it? That discontentment, or the, Lord, I want to get out of this sin place, or this is not right, is actually a sign of something. Because Timothy there, Paul writes to Timothy, sorry, Elizabeth?
Sorry, I just said the heart.
The heart. Yeah, so Paul writes there to Timothy, and it's very clear, but true worship comes with that, which will make you content. So if you are not content, what must we ask ourselves? In what way are we worshipping? Not, okay, Lord, I suppose I should just scale down my ideas and I must be content with what I have. But the Greek word says something completely different. So in order for us, it's not as if, it's actually conditional in a sense, isn't it? Only the true worship, as the Greek says, attracts this, or has connected to it this boundless. You will have everything you need. But it is for the purpose of giving. And I think that often we may well get stuck in our worship in this place where we are needing things from God. This needs to be done. This needs to be done. Lord, look, these people they're going to take me to court right now. Look, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is bad, this is wrong. And we approach that problem in the wrong way. Rather, we should dump it all and say, Lord, hang on a minute. Look at me, I am discontent. Is it nice to be with a discontented person? Why not? Why not? They're grumpy? Yes. Yes, they are grumpy. What else? They drag you down. They're always complaining. It's amazing, isn't it? And what is the solution? It is not what we think. We've got to dump it all and say, hang on a minute, why am I discontent? And believe me that an instruction to be content is not the answer. It's not the answer. We think it is. Oh yes, that's right, I must. Like with the little ones. It's an interesting little message because they have heard their mother and father say to them often things like, must be happy with what you've got. Look at that child, look at that person. They have far less than you have. And does it work? It doesn't. It's clear as day it doesn't. It doesn't even work on me. And I've tried. Oh, get a hold of yourself, Lord. Okay, now I must be content. I must be content. It doesn't work as an instruction. This contentment, the autarkes word, the Lord connects it automatically to true worship. It will be there. Okay? You don't have to worry about it. The Lord has already said, He's made the maths, He's done the maths for us. He says 1 plus 1 will equal 2. So don't worry about that. Don't worry about this or that, how I must be more content, I must dump all of that and go right back to the beginning. What is your worship of God based on? Is that not so? Is it true worship, which wants nothing, you're not interested in anything for yourself? It's to give. It is to, as we move to Easter, I would like you on Friday to think a little bit, and that was our verse that we read in the beginning, of how good God is and how much He has given, even in your own life. And for us to realize that, my word, everything that He has done, everything that He has already done, we are going to see next Sunday, that in any case. But let us this week ask ourselves this question. Lord, why is there discontentment in me? Discontentment, if we take the Greek word, the opposite of that is to not have that, the riches. Can you see the point? If autarkes, contentment, means that you have everything, then discontentment means it's not a feeling, it's a reality. You don't have it. So it's not a feeling, oh, I'm feeling discontent. And here on this side, I'm feeling content. No. You either have the abounding abundance that God gives, or you don't. It's as simple as that. And it's not a question of, oh, okay, no, I must just be content. No. Let us go back to our motive of why we worship Him and how we worship Him. Are we truly worshiping Him? Because then all of that will simply follow, and there will be no discontentment. You don't have to address the contentment or the discontentment. In fact, that is very confusing, that translation, isn't it? But godliness with contentment is great gain. We think, oh, we must just be, yes, godly, and we must, go to church, and then we must also be content. And there's great gain in that. That's how our brains work when we read that verse, isn't it? But it's not what it says in the Greek. It says true godliness comes with that abundance, and you will have it. Jenny?
I've always thought that contentment is actually a recognition of the goodness of God. I mean, if you think about it, He's given us all things, really, and it's like when you're concentrated and focused on Him, well, what does that matter?
Yes, that's right. Exactly. Exactly. What does it matter? And of course, in those who are not in it for anything. In fact, being in it for anything, you're missing the point completely. Those people in Malachi, as this person in 1 Timothy 6, is missing the point completely, aren't they? True worship is us coming before the living God already way in. We already know we've received way more than we could ever have dreamt. That's true worship. So if we find ourselves in a position of discontentment, oh my word, we've got to backtrack that bicycle right to the beginning again. Say, my word, how did I land up there? And it comes down to our, as you're saying, Jenny, it's a good comment you're making there. I was wanting you to understand that somehow in the translation, this idea is lost, that true worship automatically comes with an abundance. That is what Paul is trying to write to Timothy. Yes, it's like a magnet. It can be no other way. They are connected, those two things. All right? So, think about this carefully. I know it's quite an interesting concept, and we need to probably change some ideas that we had in our minds before. But check your worship of God. First check your level of discontentment. First. And if there is anything like that, oh, this is not my, oh, this is, no, this is all, I don't know what's going on here. Go back. Lord, I want to worship you in spirit and in truth. I want to worship you correctly. Then all of that will automatically be there. That's what Paul is saying. But we take it linguistically and say, okay, let's look for the problem. The problem is I'm discontent. I must be content. Okay, let me say that to myself 100 times every morning. I must be content. I must be content. Crazy. Just give it up. Leave it. And that abundance which comes with true worship, my goodness. If we read how that sounds, it's crazy, hey? And God is able to make all grace abound to you, provided you are worshipping Him truly, so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. It's unbelievable, isn't it? And then he goes on, now He supplies seed for the sower and bread for food, and will also supply and increase your store of seed, and will enlarge the harvest of your righteousness. You will be made rich in every way, so that you can be generous on every occasion, and through us your generosity will result in thanksgiving to God. And this is the little picture that I gave the young ones. You see, the purpose of God blessing you with this abundance is so that praise and thanksgiving can overflow to his name. How does that work? What does he mean?
With these other people, with these
That's right. So essentially, how you and I glorify God's name is to have others, we don't even really often know who they are, but because of something that has been done through us, some praise and thanks is overflowing from their lives to God. So I've been indirectly, Lord, praise and thanks is overflowing from me to you. I'm not sure how it works, but that's why. So that praise can overflow to him because of what he has done. In that other way, no thanks, no praise overflows to him. It stops dead with me saying all these other things in my discontented state. This is too short, that's too long, this is not wide enough, that's too narrow, this is not working, this... Stop. Stop that whole thing. And so let us this week, as we go on to Sunday, and of course in that note that I gave you, you will see that I draw attention to one thing, the purpose. So we don't get fixated on the cross, or fixated on the blood, or fixated on the burial, or even fixated on the resurrection. We're looking towards the purpose of it all, which was him coming and living in us. So already now, I know it's a week before, and I know many Christians, they want to concentrate on the cross. Now that's wonderful, and I would encourage you to do so, of course. But all the time we're looking to that other thing, where we are filled with that abundance, because that was the purpose of it all. Okay, and ask the Lord to see whether there is any wicked way in us this week in our worship of him, because that's the problem of this lack of abundance. It's a lack of him overflowing.
It should flow out of you unconsciously, shouldn't it?
That's right.
Abundance should flow out unconsciously.
That's right, because there is it's proof. It's interesting how that thing is proof that you are worshipping God in a way in which you have no eye on anything in it for you. It's interesting, isn't it? But the moment that comes into it, the whole thing literally grinds to a halt. And we find ourselves in that discontented place. Crazy. And then, of course, we have lots of counseling that says, all right, no, you must just now, change the situation and be content. It's crazy. It's empty, dry words. Go back to the beginning. Jen?
Do you think that is the problem today, that people are trying to work out how to do these things instead of focusing their attention on Jesus himself and all that you've been discussing?
Who is the source of where all that stuff comes from, in order that it overflows? Exactly. It's where it breaks down, isn't it? Now let me engineer it. Yeah, let me weld a little bit here and stick a little bit there and put a bolt in there and, there it is.
And I look good here and I feel good because I'm looking good.
It's as dry as dust.
What do people give themselves enough time? Okay, I get that. I'm going to ask someone about something that I don't have time. And I'm thinking, even if you are busy doing something, you can still, in yourself, in your heart, giving yourself enough time to just calm down and just slowly, methodically do what you have to do.
Right.
And then just, that's just my theory anyway.
Yeah.
People don't give themselves enough time to...
It's very busy. It's one of the devil's tricks, really, is to make everybody very busy. So let's just cut back right to the base again, hey? Cut it back. Even today, even now in our time of prayer. Say, Lord, I'm in that place of discontentment. And you've just explained to me that true worship is linked up with that abundance. So what's the matter? The problem is not with him. The problem is with us. So So the Lord knows where you are today, right now. And the same with you as for those people in Malachi. He says, come now, let's have a chat about this. Return to me, and I will return to you. And this abundance, which is just contentment with it anyway, will be yours. And you will start overflowing. We flowing inwards. We wanted to flow inwards. The moment we wanted to flow inwards to us, to me, look at my problems, look at my situation, it dries up. Oh, what's happened to it? The moment it's different, it starts flowing. So let us just spend a bit of time in prayer.